I'm Brandon Niles. We're here with another episode of Between Two Bridges, and I am truly honored, and I actually mean honored when I say so. I know everyone says they're honored to have you here, but I'm very honored to have John Landry from the Stanfields here with us today. How are you today, John?
Good. Thanks for that warm welcome.
No problem. So maybe not everybody knows who John Landry or the Stanfields are.
What do you mean?
Well, I honestly don't know, honestly. I mean, I think everybody does. But just in case there is the odd person, can you just give like a little background or some history behind the Stanfields?
Sure. I was born in February 25th, 1980 in St. Martha's Hospital in Ivany, and I grew up in Guysborough, Nova Scotia, and started playing in a band with my cousin Jason Wright. Probably, officially when I was about 15, 16, but unofficially we were making up albums and songs in our head and that didn't exist since we were babies. So, long story short, we started the Stanfields in 2008, and joined forces with some of our buds from the hood and let her rip, and we're here 10 years later.
Nice. So you, Jason McIsaac, who plays guitar,
yep.
Mark Murphy, who plays the drums, have been doing this since the beginning. And you mentioned Jason Wright was with you guys,
the founding member. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's kept you guys together? And maybe for some of the people that aren't with your band anymore, why they left?
Oh well, it's a funny thing. This business is the front facing piece and the back room piece. And the front facing piece. They teach you and they demand that you're showing forward momentum and that you're having the time of your life at all times, and that every day's a joy and every day's a party and everything is peachy keen. On the other hand, as a traveling band, there are some real stark realities that are very akin to something that like the downward side of what a trucker might face or what people who travel might face generally, being away from home, financial difficulty, because playing in a band isn't like cashing in your check every week or two.
That's right.
And you're all at once you're your own promoter and publicist and graphic designer and writer and band leader and tax attorney and everything else all at once. So it's a very entrepreneurial gig, and sometimes it can feel quite lonely, even though your job is to connect with people and
right.
bring people together, in some way, shape, or form, genre aside.
Mm-hmm. So how did you guys get started way back then? What got the Stanfields to where it is today?
Well, how it started and where it is are two completely different things, the band started very innocently. It's, the core of it, despite my sort of rant there a second ago, the core of it still remains very fun. And that means making music with friends
right.
and family, basically. It is. It's, and a friend of mine once said, it's not business. It's not family. It's band, and it's like a third thing. It's like a fourth eye or a fifth dimension, or So having the reason for existing still remain at the core. Making music and entertaining people is the thing that at the end of the day, no matter how much bullshit happens, that you can kind of come back to this and still feel good about it. And as far as like my cousin Jason, who I mentioned earlier, and Craig Harris, also another founding member of the band, these were guys who had two young children, young children separately, with their families, their families, and being on the road took a real toll, on them, and there was no acrimony around the decision for those guys to step away from it, and in fact they still join us from time to time.
That's awesome.
On stage, so it's just because we call it the mega stands, and there's 70 guys on stage, so it's a lot of fun, and it's like a reunion of sorts, and
right.
we do that from time to time. So
right. So every band has a song that they just don't like to play live, like with Nirvana is "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Right.
What's that for you?
Dirtiest Drunk, Dirtiest Drunk, Dirtiest Drunk, Dirtiest Drunk.
Why is that?
I hate it. It was a throwaway song to begin with.
Okay.
Honestly, like I think I wrote it in my head on a bus ride home from work, and it was meant to be originally like one of those sort of Barrett's Privateers clap and sing a part, and everybody does the refrain, sort of thing. You'd beat on a table and sing it. Somewhere along the line, we put it to music, and it turned into this kind of punk rock song that you know, in my opinion, sort of lowest common denominator sort of stuff when you compare it to the rest of our catalog, you know. But then, even then again, there's still a message in that, but, you know, at its face value, you know, it kind of comes off as this sort of like reckless, you know, piss tank party song, and it's really not, but that's the way it's perceived, and that kind of has a knock-on effect too. You know, in a world where it's like immediate and snap decisions and you know, things like this, that was a song that basically put us on any sort of map whatsoever, and, you know, therefore I think some judgments were made, you know.
Yep.
But on the other hand, opportunities also reared their head, and, you know, we you know, shortly after that song dropped, we got linked up with a great local management company, and who, you know, guided us through, you know, the professional part of the business that we didn't understand or even really care to understand until we were in it, you know.
Right. So you mentioned punk rock in your catalog. You guys have a pretty widespread catalog, like with Dirtiest Drunk, and then with like a song like Up the Mountain. Like what made you go from such a wide variety, I guess?
I think that's our collective personality. You know, we're literally a marketer's nightmare.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you know, this is an industry where, you know, the people with the beans, you know, basically the people who want to profit from your likeness and artistic output, they want it as consistent and as identifiable as possible.
Okay.
Meaning, you know, especially in this day and age where it's like, you know, algorithmic based and, you know, deep data and blah, 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 you know. And so they want to be able to, like, put it in a neat, tiny little box that fits in a fragmented subgenre and be able to market to those people directly.
Right.
You know, I've yet to see a box that we fit in that respect, you know. So it's very you know, the word I'm looking for anyway, it's like split personalities in a sense, you know. So like our audience, I always like to say, has both kinds of blue hairs in it, from the punk rock Mohawk guys to the senior citizens.
That's right.
You know, so how does somebody step into that equation and turn this weird little project of ours that can't decide what it is besides being a loud and live band? You know, how does that happen? I don't know.
So,
but it's fun.
I've had the pleasure of taking to one of your shows in Churro, and one of the songs you play, this was shortly after the release of your acoustic album, and Up the Mountain was one of the songs you guys played, and the amount of emotion that was behind that song was phenomenal. I think everybody was just silent throughout the whole song, just soaking it in. What's the story behind that song to make it so emotional?
Well, it's funny. It started off as a bit of a joke.
Okay.
So Jason McIsaac's from Cape Breton, and his family home is in a place called Dunvegan. It's on the west side of the island. So their home is in a little glen, a little valley, and they have this road that goes up the mountain behind their house to their cottage. You know, so it's this beautiful cottage that overlooks the Northumberland Strait, where you'll just, you know, postcard kind of stuff, right? So that's where the partying happens in the summer. So we had done a few shows in Cape Breton, and oddly enough, we had a day off on a Wednesday, so we went up there and had a barbecue and one beer each, and, you know.
Yeah.
And Jason's father, Kevin, he had steak and lobster, and he was like, I'm not gonna feed you guys until you write me a song. So we're just kind of like, all right. So we just made up this ditty, you know, Up the Mountain. You know, parts of it, you know, and then just kind of put it all together, and it really, you know, just sort of this, you know, traveling worker kind of feel. You know, it's just a very easy thing for us to collectively tap in terms of an emotional kind of response. So the song was written. But at that point, there was no real trigger in terms of it, like an emotional kind of meaning behind it until probably shortly after the record came out. We were on tour, and we were on tour in Western Canada, which is a whole other world really from where we live. I mean, despite how many times you go out there, it's different.
That's right.
It's not bad or good; it's just different. And we had been on the road for the best part of a month at that point, and we pulled into Kamloops, British Columbia, and our manager, he called us, and I picked the phone, and he'd give us the news that Jay Smith had passed away. And Jay, a bit of a local legend, having his own band Rock Ranger, and of course being the guitar player for Matt Mace for the longest time. And coincidentally, those guys and us, we were on top of each other, touring across Canada. We'd be in one town one night, they'd be in town the next night, sort of thing, all the way across. And Jay had committed suicide. Wow. That night before in the city we had just left 2 days prior. I just remember pulling into the venue. I don't remember anything, but I don't remember unloading the gear. I don't remember setting up. I don't remember sound checking. I don't remember any of it. I hardly remember the show. Wow. I remember two things. I remember feeling very vulnerable. I remember calling my wife and just being like, "Holy shit, I love you," feeling very vulnerable out there, and thinking that this is sort of the time where the innocence of being these rippers on the road, because like all that stuff adds up, and felt very vulnerable, but at the same time I also felt very grateful that I was with my brothers. So it was a weird mixed bag, and I remember playing the song that night, and it went from this sort of thing that got us our supper, and turned into a tribute to a fallen friend, and that's happened a few times since with our John Walters, who he was the guy in the Dirtiest Drunk video. He's the main character, and he ended up being a great friend to all of us, and he passed away in a car accident. Jeez, 3 years ago, and again, we sang that at his funeral, and then of course our real good friend Carlton Monroe, my mentor, he, in all things, he passed away from glioblastoma, just this time last year, actually almost to the day. Wow. And again, there's this sort of thing where we pay tribute to our friends, and they're starting to knock off one by one. So
well, my thoughts and prayers go with you and your and to their families. We'll take a turn, try and pick it up a little bit.
That guy knows how to party or what, eh?
So we kind of talked about this last spring, but just to bring it back up again, you guys don't mind voicing your opinions in your music, and you guys released your new album, Limbo Land, back in March, and on the first track of the song, Afraid of the World, it starts right out with a line was drawn in the sand by a fool with a big stick and tiny hands who promised a wall and talked about greatness and dared speak for me. So I guess what I want you to know is just what's this referring to?
It's Trump. Honestly though, I mean, one level me as a writer, I look at that and I'm like, that's pretty lazy writing, like I usually try to shroud it a little bit more, but I don't know. I think we live in a time now where absolute charlatans are degrading our democracy, and they're I watched the midterm elections last night in CNN, probably like everybody else in North America, and looking for that kind of glimmer of hope where like a new paradigm was going to take over political thought and process, and maybe we saw it and maybe we didn't, but we're in a world where we need to shock everybody all the time, and extreme, and it's hard left and it's hard right, and there's no room for a modern voice in the middle. We throw out the good ideas with the bad, depending on your point of view, and I think those lines in effect are what Trump. It's about Trump, but it's not about Trump. It's about what Trump represents. He's the ultimate, icon for, this extremist sort of self-serving mindset that is bleeding through governance from top to bottom. And unfortunately, that has a real effect on the way we communicate with each other, the way we treat each other in society, and the way we do business, the way we plan our lives and teach our children, and it really bothers me, and I feel like this song and the existence of this band, despite the sort of party antics and everything that we like to have with the show, I feel like a job of an artist is to contribute to pushing back against ill behavior. I mean, what else are we here for?
Right.
What else are we here for? So, I'm not saying that song's the greatest song in the world and change it or anything. It's just certainly not. But it's just a sentence in a volume of creative content to kind of push back against this wave of bullshit.
So, have you experienced any pushback from maybe being so open about your opinions in your music?
No, I don't think first and foremost that I don't think it's even reaching the people who would be outraged. I don't think they care enough.
Okay.
But more importantly, I think that I think it's pretty indicative of the audience that we have. In some ways, maybe I'm just kind of speaking in an echo chamber myself. And I have to consider that from time to time. But I like to think that we can walk a middle ground that tries to be positive and tries to take the best from every point of view that we can, and as individuals, as a group, as a community. I mean, there's a real community around this band, and it's something I'm eternally grateful for every day. But like I said, both kinds of blue hairs. That means that you're getting, different angles on the same thing. A 6 is it's a 6 for one person and a 9 for another.
Right.
But if we can be something that builds a bridge, then I'm very happy with that, even just on a small micro level.
Right.
That's tremendous for me.
So, you guys have toured over in Europe a few times.
I was just there 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what's it like traveling the world, that you guys have a fan base in Germany or wherever?
It can be surreal. I mean, at this point, I'm so far into it that it's normalized a bit. Doing this for a long time, but maybe I need to shake my head a little bit and realize how unique that is, statistically speaking, even because it is damn cool. Yeah. It's pretty damn cool when you can convey an idea to somebody who grew up in a completely different culture or a partially different culture, and listen to a response from them, and they want to buy your T-shirts. They want you to sign their stuff, and you've never met this person before, and you could probably hardly pronounce the town that they come from, Yeah. But it's a real tremendous thing, and that's the kind of thing that music can do.
Yeah.
So,
looking back to when the Stanfields first started, did you ever think you guys would have gotten this big, touring over in Europe? A few awards here and there from Nova Scotia Music Association. What was your guys' big picture starting out, I guess?
There wasn't. I think that's the thing. There never was. There was no big picture until somebody painted it for us. And then we started to think about it and started to get older, started to have children, started to think about, hey, I'm not invincible anymore. But when it started, there was none. I admire a lot of the younger artists these days. Like, they're they're like fucking androids. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Like, they know they're children of a different age, you know. Like, for us, when we started, there was only a few doors to get your music out there, and it was pressing and distribution and radio, and you needed a guy to do that for you. And then, you know, we kind of caught the tail end of all this, and then the digital streaming thing really kind of took over. But there was no plan. There was none. We just wanted to make music that made us happy.
Right.
And, you know, we could just go back to the garage right now and still be happy.
Nice. So looking back on your road so far, what's the best memory that stands out to you over your whole career of the Stanfields? Like, what's something that just like you think about every day?
I'm not allowed to talk about that. Oh, that's a good question, man. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's like a collage to me, you know, because I think the thing that's kept us going for this long is just finding the value in the small things.
Yeah.
You know, I think something pretty special for me personally as a member of the band was probably we played a show in Germany. It was our first time in Munich. And we'd done our sound check. It's just this shitbox little club, you know. And, you know, we're just like, man, the PA sucks in here. It's just a basement. It's awful. So we're standing outside the band apartment, and I was by myself, and I was having a cigarette, and I watched this lady come up to me, a middle-aged woman with a young girl on each arm, and walking to me kind of, you know, somewhat slowly, like she was guiding them. And as they were coming closer, I could see that they were blind.
Oh, okay.
They were blind twin sisters. And the lady who was guiding them, turned out to be their mother. She said, "Excuse me, are you in the Stanfields?" And I said, "Yeah, my name's John." And as soon as I said that, the two girls, they had a real response. They're like, you know, like, I was just like, okay, what's going on here? You know, like, I'm kind of like waiting for somebody to come out of the shadow, like the bat or something, you know. I'm just not used to that. Anyway, the questions started flying about our music and lyrics and like deep cut questions, you know, like about what this means. And eventually I'm just like, hey, come on into the apartment, you know. And we sat down at the kitchen table, and the guys all gathered around, and the two girls, they just, you know, they dissected the whole catalog from a lyrical standpoint.
Wow. And
asked me questions that nobody's ever asked me, and made connection on dots. There are some songs that are actually kind of a serialized sort of story, right? And they're the first people to ever catch on to that. And it really blew my mind. It blew my mind that these two girls from, you know, rural Germany, who had driven an hour to come to the show in the first place, had found it, cared about it that much to ask that many questions and seek us out. And you know, everybody was just, you know, noticeably goosebumps sort of thing, right? And I'll never forget that.
Wow. So what are the Stanfields working on right now? What's next for the Stanfields?
Well, we're looking ahead to Blacktop Ball 2019, which is our yearly music, camping, beach, dog show event. Last year was a tremendous success, so we're really this will be our 5th year.
Oh wow!
And it's just the best time ever. Like, I look forward to it. It's just, that'll be in August 9th and 10th. You're getting the scoop, by the way.
Am I?
Yeah, you're getting.
Nice.
I'm giving you the scoop.
That's perfect.
August 9th and 10th, 2019. We're going to be putting on tickets, advanced stocking stuff for tickets on sale very shortly. I'm making some cool things, like a downloadable card that you can do when you buy the ticket and give it to a gift for somebody, you know, kind of things like this. But otherwise, yeah, man, we're aiming to have a new record out at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Blacktop, yeah.
Any tips or hints as to what may be on this record, what we could expect?
There'll be drums. I'll be singing. There'll be guitars and all that stuff. We actually have an armload of songs that we're ready to continue. Well, we're workshopping them now, and I just kind of feel like at this point in my life, I just want to throw out new music in smaller doses, or smaller and quicker doses, and stop trying to play a younger person's game, and understand
that all catches up with us quick.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to start out, can be okay, but like to get anywhere in the music industry can be difficult. But if you were to change at least one thing in the music industry, what would it be to help make it easier for people starting out?
Man, I don't even know where to start there. Honestly, because I am on both sides of the equation too, and I find myself kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a bit, to be quite honest with you. And on either side, it's just like I wish artists would understand that there's a lot of work that goes in behind, like an incredible amount of work that goes in behind just somebody casually pressing play on your playlist or buying a ticket.
Right.
It's 10 to 1, you know. And on the other hand, I wish industry people would remember that artist music isn't a fucking lemon that you pick off a tree and just pass it around and call it content. It's somebody's life's work. And I wish it was treated with greater reverence.
Right.
Yeah, I really do. I get really frustrated with those people, and I see them every day. All right, like I deal with them frequently. I'm lucky that I have a lot of people around me that do understand that. But there's this sort of overarching thought that music's disposable, and I think that's what I think the streaming platforms are strengthening that, despite their best efforts to not. But this is a very disposable age for music, and it's very, very difficult to connect with the people you need to, even though at the right at our fingertips technically.
That's right. So what would you say to a band that maybe has that mentality or is starting out and looking to go somewhere in the music business?
I would recommend that a person learns a trade. Now, don't get me wrong, because the first few years are the hardest. What I found that was very easy for me, which made things easier for me, was that I had a trade that made my time reasonably flexible. Shift work, service work, all this stuff. Just it means that you're regimented to somebody else's time, and your ultimate goal is going to suffer. So I did a lot of contracting work. Okay. Like as a drywaller.
Okay.
Like that was my gig. Yeah. Like I would drywall all week, and sometimes I'd be jumping in the van with my work clothes still on, heading to PEI, and the muffler strung up with piano wire, and, the whole bit.
I think mine is right now in my car.
Right. Or even something that ties into the music industry, like like graphic design, or anything like that, like kinds of things. We live in a content world now, like. Regular content being drip fed is important, so that feathers out into graphic design, or even something like what you're doing, or audio engineering, or anything that can contribute to your own project, and something that you can farm out to other people as well. So that's what I would do. And then give yourself the time. By doing that, I think it gives yourself the time to really understand who you are as an artist and a musician. Get out there, playing the gigs, making the mistakes. A mistake is worth 10 lessons. Making the mistakes and figuring out really, like, if I think about myself, like from when I was 22 until I was 28, these are two different people because of all the mistakes I got to make playing country music at Allegiant and Miramichi, and like just random things like that informed me that in ways that I was never, but all while having that base of being able to not have to starve, because I don't believe in starving artists. I think that is complete hogwash. It's how are you supposed to be at your best self when your body is dying? Right. Right. We don't want we have kids, we have food for kids in school for that same reason. Mm-hmm. So why do that? It's just a romantic notion that I think's foolish, and that's just paint it that way so somebody else can benefit.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sitting me with here today,
Hey,
John. It's been a
my
real
pleasure.
pleasure. We'll be back in a few minutes, and you're going to play us a tune. Or
Yeah.
2 or 3 or 5 or how many ever I can get out of you. We'll be right back on Between Two Bridges. Perfect.
I'm going to point out. Where's the other bridge?
Yeah, we're not between them. We're lying. We're lying.
I was going to call you out. And I was like, nah.